Hello and welcome to part 2 of chapter 2 in CCNA1. This is about how to do basic configuration on a switch, for instance, or another type of device. The example here will be on a switch. So what we're going to do in the basic configuration is that we're going to configure a host name, we're going to set up some passwords, and we're going to put in some IP addresses, and that's it. That's the very basic configuration. Host name is basically just for your own sake to have to have a label on each of the devices. If you have like multiple switches in your environment and you want to configure it, you need to somehow know which switch you're in, especially when you're starting using the network to configure it. So what we do is that we just use a command called host name. When we are in config mode, we go to first privileged mode and then config mode by using the command configure terminal, and then we use the command host name and then a name we want. In this case here is switch floor 1, and I can see when I press enter the name is immediately changed. So this is the host name. I want to also make some kind of security, put some security in my device, because I don't want everyone to be able to change the configuration or to see the configuration. So I want there to be a password when I go from user mode to config or to privileged mode. I also might want a password when I put in the console cable, because if you have physical access to it, you can put in the cable and then you are actually in the device also. So I want somehow to have a password on that one as well. And I might want, or I actually has to have a password when I want to configure it using the network, using Telnet, for instance. So there are these different types of password, and of course the same rules apply here, that when you choose the passwords, it should be strong passwords, and of course passwords that you are able to remember. So to set the passwords, for instance, the password to enter privileged mode, well, then I use the command enable secret. That's the command, and class in this case here is the password. To set up the password when I want to connect to the console cable, I go to line console 0, which is the name of the console interface, and then I say password, and in this case here the password is Cisco. I enable login and then I exit it. Then I've set the password on that one. If I want to set it on my Telnet or SSH connections, well, then I go to line VTY, which is the virtual line. In this case 0 to 15 will give me 16 simultaneous connections. I might set that down. If I know I'm the only one, I can put it to 5 or something like that. Then again, the password, Cisco in this case, not a good password, but just as an example, and then the login. And then my passwords are set. The thing with the passwords is that only the enable secret password is encrypted. So if I do a show running config or I copy my configuration to a text file, I will be able to see the passwords. Not when I'm using enable secret. There was an older way called enable password, and that will not encrypt it. But enable secret will encrypt my privileged password. But the two others, the one that I set on the console cable and the VTYs, are not encrypted. If I do a show running config to see what I've put in so far, I will be able to see the passwords in clear text. If I want to avoid that, well, then I use a command called service password encryption, and this will encrypt all the passwords that I've entered. So you can enter them first and then encrypt them all afterwards, which is a good idea when you're finished configuring and you want to secure your device. You can also put in something called a banner message. I will not do that, but you can. This is just a text string that will come up before you actually go into the device. In this case here, you can say this is a secure system, authorized access only. The command for that is banner MOTD, which is for message of the day. Of course, do not say welcome or something like that. That's also not very smart, because then whoever wants to can try to get into your device. But overall, tell us as little as you can about yourself, so do not put that in. To say what I've done so far, I use a command called copy running config to startup config. The switches are designed, or also the routers, that we have a running configuration. Whenever I make some changes, it will happen immediately. But if I want it to be something that's still there when I boot it up again, well, then I have to copy my running configuration to startup configuration. So to save it, you do a copy running config to startup config. You can also do a show running config to see your running configuration. You can do a show startup configuration to see what's saved. And it's not saved on a hard drive, because a router or a switch does not have a hard drive, but it has something called NVRAM. This is non-volatile RAM, which will be there even if you reboot the device. While the running configuration is only stored in the RAM, so it will be lost if you power off or reboot the device. But if we configure it, we definitely want the changes to be there when we reload. And reload is also a command that you can put in. If you want to restart it, you do reload, and it will ask you, the system has been modified, do you want to save it, if you haven't done that yet. And then you can say yes or no. Yep. You can also save your configuration to a text file. You can, for instance, use PuTTY or any other type of emulation program to do that. So what you do is that you go in and say that I want to enable logging, and then you put in your log file, and then you put in show running config, and then you take that and it will be saved into a text file. And afterwards you should actually use non-logging after that, because you don't want to log everything you put in. Yeah. The last thing that is a part of the basic configuration is the IP address. All devices need an IP address to function on the network. At the time being, we don't really know that much about them yet, but it is important that we have IP addresses. When you have your computer, you will put in an IP address, or you will get one automatically from a server. And the same thing here. You need to have a different type of IP address to be able to connect to it. And on routers, for instance, we need to have on each and every port, we need to have or interface, we need to have a specific IP address. Depending on, for instance, if it's a LAN port or a WAN port or whatever it is. On a switch, it does not need to have an IP address on all of its ports. For instance, a 24-port switch does not need 24 IP addresses. Here we are using something called a switch virtual interface, where we have an IP address that is given to the switch overall for all the devices. And to be able to configure that, we will go in, well, this is just how to do it on the computer. And on the computer, we don't want that. And on the computer, we go into configure terminal, we go into something called interface VLAN 1, which is the switch virtual interface. And then we give it an IP address with the command IP address, and then what we want, the IP address and the subnet mask. And we do a no shutdown. No shutdown is to enable the interface or to open it up. All interfaces are by default closed. So if we want to open them up, we do a no shutdown. And we can see it afterwards by using the command show IP interface brief, and it will tell us here the IP address that we have entered, for instance. And to be able to check that everything is working correctly, we can also ping. So what you will normally do is that you will go to your computer and try to ping the device that you are connected to and that you have configured. When you're pinging, you are sending out a small packet, and that packet will go back to you. So if you get an answer back, it means that the device is online on the network and you can connect to it.